Hello everyone. In this tutorial, we are going to see what is Prisma and why you should be using it. As it is stated in its official website, Prisma is a next generation Node.js and TypeScript ORM. So you might be thinking, what is an ORM? So let me just show it in a diagram view. An ORM is basically a software which is useful to query data from a database. So here I have a typical client and server architecture where the client requests for some data and server catches the request, and then it has to do some work, go and search for the data and query the data from the database. So here Prisma has some Rust query engines which are written in the Rust programming language. Those go to the database and query the data and bring you back the data. Essentially, you don't have to write all this raw SQL to do this. It is everything handled by the Prisma. Instead of doing raw SQL, we could do something like this. This is the syntax of Prisma, how we could use. Don't worry, we will be saying more about this, but this is just an introduction. So await prisma.users or find many and where ID is 10. So this is a basic introduction about Prisma. We will be diving into the code right in the next section. Here I have opened an empty folder inside of VS Code, and let's just initialize our node project with npm init-y for yes for all. So this will create a package.json, so we can just install some of our packages to work with Prisma. So essentially we will be writing an Express server, so we will be installing Express and Prisma client. So let it do its thing, and we will also be installing some dev dependencies. So we are using TypeScript, right? So we will be installing some dev dependencies to work with TypeScript. So the dependencies are Prisma, which is actually a collection of all the tools. I will explain the difference between Prisma and Prisma client. TS node to execute our TypeScript file without compiling. Without compiling ourselves, it just compiles and gives you the output. And the actual TypeScript, and we have nodemon to restart our server every time our file changes. And obviously we will be having our types for node and types for Express. So until it installs, we will just create a index.ts file inside of our source directory. So we have our index.ts, and while we are here, we can just create an tsconfig.json file so that compiler knows what to expect from TypeScript. So I have a standard tsconfig file actually, so I will just paste some configuration for TypeScript. So you could just use this, or you can just use your own one. Doesn't matter actually until it works. So this is a basic project setup, and in the next section we will initialize Prisma and we will write some scripts to run our server. See you there. So we have our packages installed, and the next step is to initialize our Prisma project. So what we could do is npx prisma init. So what this CLI command will do is it will initialize a Prisma project and it will create some files based on that. So let's run this. There you go. Prisma has created two main things. First one is the Prisma folder in which we have the schema.prisma file. So this is a source of truth for all the database relations, models, and everything. So you will see how we will be writing a user and the post model in this particular file. And if you see, it has also created a .env file where it has a database URL as an environment variable, and which is pointing to a PostgreSQL database connection string. And this particular database URL is referenced over here as Prisma sees this file and it automatically tries to connect to the database. So that is how you initialize the Prisma project. So now that we have created Prisma in our project, let's write some basic Express server and make it run. So go into the source and index.ts and let's import Express from Express. And const app is Express. So let's listen to this Express server at port 5000. So app.listen to the port, and let's just print something when the server starts. Let Copilot work for me. There you go. Thank you, Copilot. So let's just write a basic Express route. Whenever the user visits the port 5000 of our localhost, we'll be sending hi there. So very basic Express server, nothing crazy. So let's just see how can we work with this. We have to write a dev script so that we can run our server. So let's go to the package.json. Inside the scripts, let's write a script for running our server. Essentially, we want to run this server every time our index.js file changes. So we'll be using nodemon to do that. So nodemon exec ts node to compile our file and the actual file source/index.ts. So this will take care of running our script. So let's just test it out. npm run dev. So this should be starting. There we go. And there's an error. Let's see. Okay, request is not used. We can just prefix it with underscore. And as you can see, as I saved the file, the server has restarted and we are listening on the port 5000. So to just quickly check, we'll just curl localhost 5000. There we go. We get the response from the server. So here we have set up the basic Express server, and in the next section we will see how we can use Prisma to talk to the database. See you there. In this section, we will be creating some models for our database. We will basically be having some user model and some post model. So the syntax of Prisma goes something like this for a user model. So let me just explain this. We are having a user and it has an ID, which is an ID type, which basically means it's a primary key, and a default, it's just auto incrementing, and an email, which is a string and which is unique. And we have a name, which is just a string, and a created at field, which is takes the current time, and updated at field, which is at updated at type. What it does is Prisma just checks whenever if the particular record has been mutated, then it actually automatically updates this thing. We don't have to do anything. And the next thing is we have our post model. Let's see what a post model is. So don't worry about the red lines. I will just explain you that. Post model. Inside the post model, we are having the same primary key as our ID, and this is the author ID. We will be storing who the post actually belongs to. Just ignore this line. I will just explain you that. And we have a title of the post, we have the content of the post, and created and updated. So what's this red squiggly line is telling is we don't have an opposite relation between post and user. So basically this is an one-to-many relationship. So we should be having two-side relationship. But so this can be solved with adding a post field to the user. So let me just explain the syntax of this line, what it says. So here author ID actually references the author who has actually created the post. Here we are having another author field which doesn't actually get stored in the database. This is completely not inside of database. This is in database, this is inside of database, these are all inside of database. But this thing is a Prisma thing. This is just to make our lives easier. So what this is saying is, author is actually a user model, is a type of user, and the relationship goes like this. Take the author ID of the current post model and refer it to the ID of the user. So basically we are saying this particular ID references the ID, primary key of the user model. That's the actual meaning. So since we got our Prisma schema file, but this actually doesn't change anything in the database. We have to do our migrations to reflect that on the database. Before that, we have to create a database. So I have already created this. Let me just explain how this connection string works. So this is a user, which is default for me as a Postgres. If you have another user, you could just put that name over there. And here's your password. You can just put your password. I'm putting mine. And localhost, obviously we are connecting in localhost. And this is a standard port of Postgres. And this is the database we have to connect. So let me just create it. Let me just type in the database that I have. So that's just the database name I have given. Make sure you create a Postgres database and put in the right credentials, or else this connection will be failed. So that's how we connect, and now we have to actually migrate the changes. So actually the database has nothing in it. So just to prove, I'm just logging into the Postgres CLI, and if I just do connect to Prisma tutorial white key, so I'm now connected to the particular database, and if I just see \t, did not find any relations, because there has not been no change has been made into the database level. We just have created how our database wants to look. So this will to make changes to our database level, we have to migrate. We have to use another service of Prisma called migration. So for that, type npx Prisma migrate dev. So this is basically dev migration, and we will name as, since it's an initial migration, we'll name it init. So this will go and make changes into our database, create a user table, and it creates a post table, and it makes sure it has some relations. So let's just run the script. And environment variables are loaded, and it's just doing its thing. There it goes. So it has created some migration files in our folder too, in the side of Prisma folder. And notice this thing. It says something called as generated Prisma client to node modules at Prisma/client. So it's kind of different how Prisma works. So whenever you change something inside of the schema.prisma file, you have to go and run npx run Prisma generate. What this does is it generates types for Prisma client. You can just go to the node modules and check into the client. So let me just go here. Inside of node modules, you see the .prisma, and you see here all this is just types. You see our actual Prisma, another Prisma schema file, and let me just go there and see this. We have the index.ts. In this, if you see, there you go. We have a user. We have your post. So basically what it does is, every time you change your schema file, you have to run generate, so that it generates the types for you, which will be very useful when we write actual API code. So while we are migrating, it actually does for us automatically. So we get this. So now if we check any relations inside of Postgres, see, we are seeing a post model, a post ID sequence for primary key and user ID sequence, and a Prisma migrations table to look over migrations if they have affected or if you have reverted the migrations or something like that. So this is how you make Prisma work on database level. And in the next section, we will be writing the APIs for interacting with Prisma using Prisma client. So see you in the next tutorial. Welcome back. In this section, we'll be seeing how can we use Prisma client to interact with our database. Inside of the source and index.ts file, I have imported Prisma client and I have initialized Prisma client. So from here, we can actually use Prisma so that we can interact with the database. Very basic thing. So we will be writing a basic query to go and get all the users from our database. How can we do that? Let's see. Const users equals to await. So because it's a promise, Prisma dot, whenever you can see this, it has so many methods and all those things over here, and you can see post and user. So let's click user dot. There you go. These are all the methods that you can use with Prisma, and it's absolutely awesome. Let's just find every user. So we will just take find many and just leave it empty. So since we are using await, we have to put this as an async, and let's just send it with as a JSON. Currently, there are no users in our site, so we should be getting just an empty array. So for now, just I will use curl to check if it's working. If everything works, okay. Failed to connect. Okay, our server is not running, and my bad. Let's just run the server with npm run dev. Service running. If everything goes right, it just connects to the database. Yes, it has connected to the database, or else this particular line will throw you an error if something goes wrong in your .env file, or you just mess up with some password or user. You will not be able to connect. So it has connected successfully. Now let's curl into it. Curl localhost put 5000. So now Prisma should go and find all the users and should return me an empty array since there are no one. There we go. So we got our users, which is an empty array. So this is a very basic way how can we use the Prisma to query. So let us write some more things. So if we post to the same route, let's create an actual user. So request and response, and let's actually get from the body of the request. But to a body to be working, we have to use express.json. So in here we are going to get name. What was that? We are going to get name and email from our user name and email, and then we will just do const user equals to await prisma dot user dot create. Inside the create function, we will have some data property. Inside the data, we will throw email. You see this awesome autocomplete by Prisma. This is actually cool, very cool, because it actually says which is a required, which field, which is not required. Wherever you see the question mark, it is actually not required, but email and name is absolutely required. So email is actually email and name is a name. So we got our things done. So let's just return rest.json the user. So whenever they post, we take the name, we take the email and create and just send out. So for this, I will be using Postman. Postman is actually a where we can test our APIs. So I have actually configured all my routes. I will be sharing the link to this thing also, so that you can import like this. You can just click on import link and you just paste this link and click on continue, and you'll be able to use the same routes so that you don't have to type. So get all users, no user, let's create a user. So I'm creating a user with name as dummy and email as dummy. So let's just see if it works. Cannot post. Okay, because there's a route is the problem. It's just a root route. So there you go. We have got a user with an ID one, with a name, and created and updated fields. So this is a basic post request that you can do with Prisma. As we have seen the basic of creating a record inside of Prisma, now let's see how can we do relational data. Like how can we create a post and link it to the user. So I'm going to create a route for /post, and we are accepting a post request on this route, and we will accept some arguments inside of body. So we will go const, okay, name, not name and email, but thank you GitHub Copilot. We will take author ID, means who has actually created the post. We will just take it, and from the body we will get the title and the content of the post, and then it's very simple. It's the same process. Let's just await, just convert into async and await prisma.post.create, and you put in the data. See, now we have actually got our autocomplete, beautiful autocomplete. So content and title. So content is actual content, title is title, so we don't have to say it twice. So if you just leave it, if you just leave it without providing the actual author ID, who the post actually belongs to, you can just see the error. And if you just hover over it and if you check, author is declared here and expected values don't match because we haven't provided author. It needs to know who this post actually belongs to. So let's just put author ID. Not author. Author is something which Prisma creates. Author ID is which is inside of the database. So author ID, we just have to provide an author ID, and this thing will create the post, and let's just return the created post to the user, and let's just see if it works. So I'm opening my Postman, and inside of post, let's see, create a post. Inside of post, I'm gonna create a title with title 1, content, and author ID as 1. So if I just get all of my users, you will see there's only one user, obviously, and his ID is 1. So I'm just creating a user on behalf of user ID 1. And if I just send, there you go. We get a post with an ID of 1 and author ID is 1. So it just says it has an author of ID 1, title, content, updated it, and created it. So this is how you do relational data. So you might be having a question, then why we are having this thing where it says just author, not author ID. We have only this author field, and you might be wondering where we'll be using it. So we'll see that in next section, where we'll actually seed our database with some fake data, and we'll do some crazy stuff. This is the most interesting part of this tutorial. Make sure you watch it. See you in the next section. In this section, we will see how we can seed our database with some fake data so that we can actually use the power of Prisma. So go into the Prisma directory and create a file called seed.ts. What we are going to do is fill our database with some fake data so that we have some enough data to work with nice queries. So Inside of this c.ts, we will initialize our Prisma so that we could use it. And let's just initialize Prisma peer, new Prisma client, and let's just write the seed function, which will be obviously a synchronous function. So what is seeding is just we will be filling our data with lots of fake data. So for that, I just wanted to first, I will clean everything. So Prisma dot post dot delete many. So this will make sure that it deletes every post, and Prisma dot user dot delete many, and this will delete every user. So we need some fake names and some fake data. So for that, we have an actually beautiful library called as Faker. So let's install it as a dev dependency, and some types for nice intelligence. So let's install it. So Faker has installed successfully, and let's just import Faker and fill our database with some fake data. To import Faker, just import Faker from Faker. And let's just create so many some users. So user promises. This will make sense in a minute. Just let me just promise not any. Yes, let me just finish it. And let's create some 20 users to get started with. I is less than 20 and I plus plus. So you're basically storing promises, and we'll be resolving it with promise.all. So we'll be pushing something like Prisma dot user dot create. We are just creating the user, and here comes the actual job of Faker. We will be creating some name, and we need some name. So Faker dot name dot find name. So this will give us a nice name so that we can have it in our database. And similarly for email, Faker dot email, faker.internet.email. This will give us an email. So we have pushed all of our promises, and it's time to wait for that. So const users equals await promise.all user promises. So this will make sure that everything is executed and awaited. So that's it. And now we are going to take some user IDs from the users, so that we will assign some of the users to some of the posts when we create some posts. And let's write a small function, actually get random user ID, which just does what it says. So GitHub Copilot is suggesting me something, and it's quite correct. Copilot is very useful. And so we got a function. Now let's just create some posts. And similarly, this scenario of promises. And okay, nice. Copilot. Let's just create 30 posts. So post promise dot push. Push. We are pushing Prisma.post.create. Yes, exactly. And what was that? Okay, let me spell Prisma correct. Data. Okay. So here's the same thing. Faker provides us with nice data. Title as faker.lorem.sentence. That would be nice. Sen sentence. Okay, that's a function. And we have content. Let me just put a comma. And we have content as, yes, we need some paragraphs. And author ID. You see this author ID, we have to provide it so that we just know who has created the post. And we will be generating some random user, which is a function actually we have just created over here. So this will fill the array with the promises. Now we have to await them. So let's go to the bottom. Okay, it's just too slow. Okay, now let's wait for that so that it just creates some posts. Post is equals to await promise.all and post. So at last we will just log if the users have created or posts have created. So this is our seed script, and in order to run this we have to call the function, obviously. So now we have written our seed script, and let's just call our function, which is seed, and no copilot. Let's just call the seed and catch for some errors if there are any, and we will log them console. Okay, just a second. Okay, we'll log them, and let's just exit out of the process. And nevertheless, finally we have to disconnect to the database. To do so, we can just call prisma.$disconnect, and this is an asynchronous task, so we have to wait it and async. So now this will make sure that our seed function runs. So in order to run this thing in itself, we have to specify a Prisma key inside of package.json. By that, what I mean is, open your package.json, go to the bottom, and just write this Prisma, and you say seed. It's a seed. So ts node, how do you execute your seed file? Seed script is, you just say ts node. So, and the file you want, so ours is a seed.ts, which has our seed script. Okay, that does the job. So to execute this, we have to do npx prisma db seed. So by running this command, it will search for the Prisma key inside of package.json. It will see the script called seed, and it will go and run the file you have mentioned, and we have mentioned as c.ts as our file. So let's run this. This should create the data, and it's running the file. If you see the logs, then it's successful. There we go. We see so many posts and users. So now in the next section, we'll be working with some complex queries of Prisma that is pretty much very cool, like include statements, select statements, where clause, and skip, take for pagination, all those cheesy stuff. So see in the next section. Now that we have created some fake data into our database, let's just write some complex queries. So go into the index file and just create a route for getting all the posts. So what you're gonna do is, okay, Copilot already does that for us. Prisma, so this is an async function. So let's just write it as, and we have to await it, or else promise will be pending and there will be no results displayed. So prisma.post.findMany, this will return like literally everything. So if we just go to the Postman, you will see post get route, and if you just send the request, you see that title is just short sentence by Faker, and author ID we have generated randomly, and content is a paragraph again by Faker. You see so many records. I mean, it's 30 of them. So it just throws all of them. Now imagine you want to do some complex queries. Like, what do you mean by that? What I want is, I want to know the username. Currently, if you just check, what we are getting is the author ID, the title, content, created and updated. Now actually I want the author name. How can I get that? I want the not only ID, but I want the name and the email of the author. How can we do that? So it's pretty easy with Prisma. Just open a object inside the find many function as its first argument, and type include, and you just hit control space and it will just throw IntelliSense on front of you. You just don't have to worry. And it's saying me you have an option of author, and if you go and put it as true, and if you go to Postman, and now you will see whole details of the author. So the author thing that you are seeing over here, let me just clarify it again. You are seeing author over here, right? And it's the same author that we define here. So this is used to bind the relations inside the database at the database level. But this is just a thing that Prisma provides us so that we can use in our queries, which is very, 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 very useful. So just click it author and set it as a true. And now go to the Postman and try to send the request. Now you will see an author field with all the information about the author. How cool is that? Because we have done some complex stuff actually. If it's a normal Prisma, normal Postgres raw SQL, then we have to like join the inner join and we have to put all things, but Prisma makes it everything easy. So this is one of it, and we can imagine if you don't want anything except name, like I want only the name, I don't want all this thing, you could do that easily. Just remove true and open a object and say, just hit control space and it says include and select. Go and click on select and hit the control space. It says count created at email. So I just want email and I tell email is true. So inside of author, include author, not whole author, and I just want email of it. So just select email is true. And if I just go to Postman and just send the request, you will see I only get email. So that's the power of Prisma. So it can do this complex stuff without any issue. So if you want name as true and go to Prisma, Postman, and you see email and name, you got both of them. So this is one of the use case. Also, what we can do is we can filter some things out. Example, we can just put a where, and imagine I want an author, a particular author. So let me just go and pick some author with author ID with 9. So I just want author ID with 9, all his posts. So I will say author ID, not author. Author means we have to provide the whole thing, but author ID is 9. So I should be getting all the posts and all the author IDs should be 9. So let's go and check. Send the request. There you go. Author ID is 9. Author ID is 9. So basically we only have 2 posts of the author with author ID as 9. So we have narrowed down our all the posts with just including author ID 9. So this is one thing you could do. Another thing is Even we can go even complex. We can just specify an object and say author ID is greater than, let's say, 10. Author ID is greater than 10. So what this essentially says, get me all the posts, include the author, select its email, select its name, and get only the auth posts where its author ID is greater than 10. I know it's a complex query, but you can see the power of Prisma here. So if you just go and send, you will see author ID 17, 14, 14, 17, 14, 21, 11, 11, 19, 20. So we have actually narrowed down to all the authors which having greater than 10. So that's pretty awesome. Not only that, we can actually do even more complex stuff. Like if let's take a title. Let's actually take a title. I want dollar. I am taking this dollar, DOLOR. Now what I want is, I want all the posts which with all these rules, plus I want title and open a braces contains, and put down your thing what you want. So I want dollar in that. So according to this, we should get this post with ID 20. We have to have a result with the post ID as 20. And if there are any more, it's okay, but we have to have this thing because we have just copied it from here. So if you just send, there you go, we have an ID post with an ID as 20 and author with 13. So this is the only post in the 30 posts having this dollar as in its title. So you have this power which Prisma gives us. You can just take so many of them, just hit control space over here, and it has so many things like ends with, equals, greater than equal to, in, less than or equal to, mode, not instant. It has so many things in it. And still we can do more things, like let's just clear the where object so that we have some objects to work with. And you can order by, you can just order your posts by maybe not created it in some chronological order. So created it descending. So if we now just go there, we'll get, see there, ID 31, since it has created it last, so it's the first one to see. So created it. So this is chronologically ordered, all the posts. And similarly, you can do some other stuff like that. And we can also do pagination. So you see skip and take over here. What skip does is, it just skips over the first n posts, as you can see over here also. And take does is, it just takes them. So let's just see what happens. Currently our first post has an ID of 31, and next is 29, and next is 70. So remember, this ID is 31. What I will do is skip 1. So I'm essentially saying skip one post, apply all the rules as it is, but skip first post. So if you just go and send, there you go, you don't have 31. We can also do it in the reverse way actually. So go to the last post and it's ID with 4. So skip -1, skip -1. I'm sorry, skip -1 and just go to the Postman and send it. There must be some error. Okay. So, and we also have take. So skip 1. So we also have take. It means we can just take it. We can just take how many you want. If you want only 2 of them, just type take as 2, and then if you just send the request, you'll just get 2 of them. If you go and type 3, it will go and take 3 of them. 1, 2, and 3 posts. So these are the most of the features that you will be using in the Prisma. Obviously, there are so many things to look about. One of the interesting things I just wanted to show about Prisma is its studio, which is just awesome. Let me just show you. Go to the open the terminal and just type npx prisma studio, and this will open a wonderful database managing thing. So over here you can see I have a post, I have a user model, and posts are 30 and users are 20. And if you click on one of them, you can just manage the data from your GUI instead of going into the PSQL and doing your stuff with command line. So it has everything in it, like ID of the user, author ID, user, it's saying it's a user model, and it's a title, it's contents, created and updated. If just click on the author, it just says who is the author. Here the particular author is Amya67 at Yahoo. And you can just click on the plus icon and just like see everyone. These are all the users, and you can see how many posts they have, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like some have 0. So this is pretty much useful thing that Prisma provides, and I enjoy using this every time. So these are some of the basic features about Prisma. Surely it has so many things we can learn about it. We can make much more complex things like middlewares for logging and some complex things. You can do this Prisma, but this is the basic thing that you have to know to get started with Prisma. So that's it. Hope you liked the video. See you in the next one.